Okay. Hey, political science peoples. I'm going to try this one again because I just looked at my video and it's all sorts of messed up, more so than I even realized. So here we go. I'm going to be talking about the Green New Deal. In particular, its portions on climate change and climate change policy. What the Green New Deal is looking to do, amongst other things, is within the next 10 years, it wants to eliminate carbon emissions. In other words, it wants to have a zero, 100% zero emissions. So basically, limiting air pollution, changing the power grid is a major issue. Going to solar and wind power, as opposed to our current standing grid as it is. Um, it's a resolution. It's not actual legislation, and it would not be able to really enforce the law as much as it would be kind of setting programs in place to take over for where things are currently. Um, Even if it were to pass in both chambers, House and Congress, resolution would still be non-binding. No one would have to do it. It would just be it'd be like a really strong recommendation. Um, Legislative experts, excuse me, describe the use of this resolution rather than binding legislation as an unusual approach, yet historic. Uh, because it is so vast, it's so broad, because it puts so many different programs in place. Um, and again, like I was saying, working on things like eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, making things more up to date as far as power grids are concerned, building and updating energy efficient, more distributed and smart power grids. Again, the wind power, solar power, things of that nature, making these things also more affordable and accessible to the general public. Um, it's working collaboratively with farmers and ranchers throughout the country to remove pollution with the greenhouse gases and from the agricultural sector as much as feasible. Um, you're going to hear stuff about cows, eliminating hamburgers and things like that, which is there, but it's not really there. What they're talking more along the lines of is trying to conserve the methane gases, limit them as much as possible, which would slow down breeding a little bit. But I mean, honestly, we're going to be okay. We're still going to have hamburgers on the 4th of July if you want them. It would be working to universally grant access to clean water, something that is a huge issue, especially if you look at areas like Flint, Michigan, which is still dealing with clean water issues. So that's pretty much the broad uh, picture, the broad scope of what this Green New Deal is. It's a resolution that addresses ways to curb climate change, to protect the environment. It doesn't want to lay out any new taxes or revenue streams other than just saying that these changes will in time pay for themselves. Sorry, no costume changes this time. I'm just going to get right into it. So on the pro side, it is a resolution that was presented to the House via the Democratic side. Excuse me again. Um, Things that they're looking at as pros, like I would support their opinion is, if you remember what happened in Texas in the winter of 2020, where massive blackouts, and that's because the power grid, this nation works on 3 power grids, and Texas is its own power grid. And these power grids are really, really out of date. I mean, they were designed to work for about 50 years and they were built about 70 years ago. So what you're seeing is a lot of issues with these power grids, clips that hold um, the wires from tower to tower, from pole to pole, are starting to just bend, snap. Wires drop out, they snap if they hit the metal frames of some of these towers. Sparks hit. If with the climate change that we see whether that's what you want to call it or not. If you want to just call it, just anomalies, okay. Um, dry, arid areas, you had a spark, and tinder, that's where wildfires can start and have started. So the pro side, the liberal, the democratic side, sees a modernization of the power grid in general as a really good thing. Whether it is a smart grid or not, updating these grids in general, three of them, is a huge boost. And part of that's actually going to be worked out, if I'm not mistaken, through this infrastructure bill that was just passed. Another thing that they look at as a total positive, and I think most of us could agree, is it's going to eliminate people dying from coal-fired power plants, which kind of sucks to go to work and you might die from doing your job. Working in coal mines and stuff like that, it's dangerous work. Um, those plants plus our cars are pretty much the biggest contributors to air pollution. And if we can eliminate the air pollution, then we're also going to eliminate about 62,000 people dying a year from air pollution causes. So that's also a positive that the Democrats look at as a good thing. Again, where there is no revenue stream, they're not saying outright it's going to make this much money. That being said, it could in turn save taxpayers up to $600 billion a year. It's going to cost a little bit in the beginning, but long term, it's more financially responsible. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money, sort of thing. And this is one of those instances. According to the Democrats, they feel if they spend the money will come back in. Another thing is that it's going to create tons of jobs. All these new power grids are going to need people to install this, the software, the hardware, the firmware, all of that stuff. People are going to need jobs to put this all together. So that's a big one. And that also boosts economy. So on the con side, the Republicans are opposing to this on all sorts of counts. But one of the things, of course, that they're going to focus on is, again, that cost. Just spend money to make money. The way the Republicans see it is that it's just going to skyrocket the debt ceiling, and it's going to put us further in debt than we already are, and we're already trillions of dollars in debt. That's not a good place to be starting. When you're that far in debt, to add lots more to it, not a great idea. Whereas the Democrats are like, oh, it's going to create 2 million jobs. The Republicans see it as it's going to take away more than 2 million jobs in just the coal and fossil fuel industries alone. Valid points. Not to say that these people will automatically be out of work, because some of us are not going to be able to afford electric cars. I mean, just really, they're not. I'm not. So I'm going to still be relying on fossil fuels. I'm getting ahead of myself. Republicans also look at where is this grid going to go? We're building this big smart grid. It's going to make all this money and it's going to create all these jobs. Where are we going to put it, though? And the consensus view is the smartest place to put it is in the central U.S., which of course is the heart of farming country, our agricultural farming, food, cattle, all that stuff right there in the central U.S. And you're going to be asking people in, Wyoming and Kansas and Missouri and, to a lesser extent, Illinois, maybe Iowa, things of that nature. You're asking them to sacrifice acres of lands for wind tunnels or wind towers. You're asking them to sacrifice land for solar paneling and lots of it. Not an easy sell. It's going to be part of that, not in my backyard syndrome type thing. And people aren't going to be crazy about having to take care of other people's stuff, sacrificing their own land and income to do so. huge one for the Republicans is, if this bill goes into place, well, won't that put the federal government in control, massive control over this brand new fancy smart power grid? And as we all know, the Republicans want less government control on things. So they're not going to be crazy about that idea. They're going to want to keep that, these grids into the private sector like they are now. Texas is, it's somewhat private. It's also somewhat state run, but it's still not federally run. So we're in the clear. But then again, if the government, if this power grid was built and the government concedes power of the grid, well, then, you know, they're looking at it as, well, aren't you just handing it over to corporations? Which, if they leave it unregulated, it could charge astronomically high rates for this new energy, which is true. But then again, not a whole lot of regulations going on energy as it is. So I don't know what the big difference would be. So in the end, with the pros and the cons laid out before me, where do I stand on it? I've heard people using the word solution in their videos, and I can't use that word. There's no solution. There's compromise. And I think that's where we need to be. I think there needs to be a consensus view that, look, science is science, politics is politics, never the tween should really meet. And the science is saying there's something going on with this planet. We need to step up and we need to do something. And government is supposed to be leaders. Leaders are supposed to lead. Leaders are, even if it's unpopular decision, are supposed to step up and say, this has got to get done. Well, something's got to get done, and it's not going to get done with a bunch of people arguing back and forth about birds getting chopped up in wind tunnels, and the sound is so loud. It's because no, just no. We need a compromise. The left, the right, the center, they need to come together and come to a consensus conclusion that, look, something's up. We need to do something. I mean, if nothing else, if they really want to deny the science, then, let them deny the science. But they have to have some sort of realization that fossil fuels aren't going to be around forever. We've been tapping into that coal. We've been tapping into oil for a long, long time. Eventually, wells dry up. Ask people during the Dust Bowl if wells dry up. They do. It's going to happen, and we need to look to alternative sources. I hope their end game isn't, just shoving everybody on a SpaceX and flying up to Mars. Maybe that is their end game, just colonize a new planet and start all over. But it's pretty out there, man. I don't actually see it happening. So my stance on it is, we need to work together. There needs to be a compromise. There's going to be sacrifices on both sides. There's things that both people are just going to have to accept that they're going to have to give up. It's like a marriage. That's just how it is, and there's no denying it. I really honestly feel that. But then I also feel that our political state at this point ain't going to make a difference. No one's going to budge. Everyone's too thick-headed. So there you have it. That being said, my two questions, I posted them. They should be on one of the other videos, but here they are. So how would the Green New Deal affect you if it were to hit its 10-year mark of 100% zero emissions? How would that change your day-to-day living, your employment, your travel, whatever it is? How do you think that would affect you personally, or, affect your family? The second question is, do you think it's significant that it has been released, that the Green New Deal was released in the form of a House resolution, as a non-binding resolution, as opposed to being introduced as a bill to go into law? And why not? I'm just curious your thoughts, y'all. Okay, it's been a pleasure, and now I got to figure out how to stop recording.